Okay, so I have a project for my education class. It's just I'm just gonna ask you a couple of questions if that's okay. It's
Sure.
just
Sure.
about your experience as a teacher.
Okay.
I'm not gonna write down the answers just because I'll have it recorded, but I'll just
Gotcha.
ask you. But thank you so much for allowing me to do this with you. Thank you very much.
Welcome. Anytime at all. I was so happy to hear from you.
I know I miss you
still
so much. Okay.
talk you on Instagram still.
Okay, so I just need to know what school district and state you worked in.
I worked in Lake County, Florida and Orange County, Florida. I finished off the last 15 years of my teaching career in Lake County, Florida, a little town called Mascot, Florida, Mascot Elementary School.
Where I'm from, got it.
Yeah.
And what grade or subject did you teach?
I started off teaching middle school. I did that for 1 year, and then I spent 10 years in 4th grade, and then 2 years in 5th grade, and another 3 years back and forth. So just 4th, 5th, and middle school.
And then in total, how many years of experience have you had teaching?
In Florida, I've had about 18, and then in Missouri, I had about 5 before that.
Okay. And I have 14 questions to ask you, if that's okay.
Sure. All right.
What is the best part about teaching, in your opinion?
I know that a lot of people say, oh, it's that light bulb moment. That's cool too. But to me, I think making the relationships, creating that family atmosphere, that safe and inclusive classroom. I still have students that I had when they were 9 years old that are now almost 30 that invite me to their baby showers and that call me on my birthday. So I think that's the best part for me, is just creating those lifelong relationships.
Okay. And what do you think, in your opinion, is the hardest part of teaching?
I think not having control over what happens to your students outside of the classroom. And they become your babies. You're stuck in the confines of a tiny classroom for 9 months of the year. You're with them all day, 6 to 8 hours a day. And then when they go home, you worry, are they eating? What's going on at home? I had a student that lived in a lean-to that had no electricity and no food. I've had students that live in the Groveland Motel. You know what that is. And so just worrying about them outside of the classroom and not having any control, or not even being equipped to deal with those psychological issues when we're just taught to teach the curriculum, and there's so many other things that we have to worry about.
Right. So we're currently in a classroom on campus with elementary students, and I'm actually seeing that in the classroom too. Yeah. So it's a little bit hard as like an assistant teacher to be like, I know I can't do anything, but
yeah, it's true. I just remember, and I've got a few in my head I could just bring up right now, but one of them had to quit school in 6th grade because grandma got sick in Mexico and she had to move back. And I think I had talked to you guys about this before. I had a student that was being prostituted out in 4th grade by her grandmother. And those stick with me. I wonder where they are today, because I still, you love them for that year. And then sometimes they go and you just worry about where they're at and how they're doing. And so, yeah, that's hard.
Right. Okay. Thank you. How do you build relationships with your students?
I think first, just making sure that they know that I'm someone that cares about them, and that our classroom is a safe place to make mistakes, celebrate mistakes, because that's the best way that we learn. I think the beginning of the year, I always like to do a lot of cooperative learning. Kagan has some Kagan strategies that teaches them, that gets them to where they start learning to collaborate and become friends. But I think also letting them see you as a human. If you make a mistake, talk to them up. Look, I messed up. Isn't that crazy? I do apologize. And so being human, and I think, when you show them respect and when you show them that you're an adult that cares about them, students perform best for teachers that they feel love them. And so I think just as long as they feel that love and support, and sometimes you're the only caring adult in their life. So I think that really helps.
Thank you. Okay, the next question is, how do you communicate with your students, their parents, and your colleagues? Like, what are your best tips for that?
I think now we live in an age where everything is digital.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, it's going to be a very rare find if you have a parent without a smartphone or even a student. And so there's all kinds of technology tools, Remind, Class Dojo, that allow you to, to communicate with parents, and not just in just everyday communication, but just sending home weekly vocabulary words and spelling words and letting parents know, oh, this is due by Friday, or field trips are due next Tuesday. But I like to have that, having Remind or Flipgrid or Class Dojo, one of those to where parents get text immediately. And the same with Dojo. I know that you can have behavior, if something happens
Mhm.
behaviorally, the parent will get texted immediately. And so that instant, the instant communication, and then it tells you as a teacher that the parent did view this at this time. And so I think that's the best way for me to communicate. I think emails are so 2017.
Yeah.
I mean, those are important too, but I think we have so much technology now that we can use that is safe and effective for teachers and students and parents.
Right. Okay. Did you feel prepared in your first year of teaching? If not, how could you have been better prepared?
I think that that first year, there's nothing in textbooks that can prepare you for that. It's just overwhelming, and there's so much being thrown at you at once. And the slow, gradual buildup of your blocks. Block 1, you have, your practicum for a couple of days, and then block 2, it just progresses. And by the time you're in block 4, that helps. But I think in order to really prepare, I think you need to know everybody at your school, the important people at your school. If I need help with technology, who do I go to? Who's my grade chair? If I need help with, with students that are having difficulty at home, who is my guidance counselor? Once you know all the important, everybody's important, but once you know all those important people and you know who to go to for help, but also find a seasoned teacher. It doesn't have to be a teacher for 30 years. It could be a teacher that's only been teaching 3 to 5 years, but having a partner that you can go and vent to, or that you can go and ask questions to, I think that helps also. But yeah, we can't teach you in textbooks what it's like that first year teaching. It is overwhelming. And I think by year 3, you kind of feel like you're not circling the drain anymore. You're staying afloat a bit, but know who those important contacts are, and find a buddy, find someone. And I mean, teachers are great about mentoring. If you just go to someone and say, it's my first year, is there any way that you could kind of help me out now and then? There's not a teacher on this planet that's going to say, no, I'm not going to help you. So
Right. Thank you. All right. The next question is, what are your favorite classroom strategies for student learning and for classroom management? That's a big thing that we're going over right now, especially with COVID and the masks. The kids are like, especially when it first started, we still see them like playing with it or like having
yeah,
all these distractions. How is your best classroom management strategies and student learning strategies?
I think a lot of it is, I mean, from day one, you've got to start with your procedures and your rules. You can't wing it. You can't, and you have to stand firm. If this is what the rule is, if this is how we do the procedure, and practice, letting the students practice, showing them examples and non-examples, pulling your mask down and saying, is it okay to have my mask under my nose? No. Is it okay to have my mask on my forehead? But just practicing those rules, practicing those expectations. A lot of schools have adopted the PBS model, positive behavior system, to where you're rewarding good behavior more than you're disciplining that negative behavior. I think that helps a lot as well. But again, Kagan has these strategies where you can identify at the beginning of the year, or the beginning of the semester, what are the rules and procedures in this class. And sometimes asking the students, and they're very easy to direct in a certain way. If you ask the students, what should our classroom look like, they're going to say the right thing. They're going to say, no talking when the teacher's talking, wear your mask. And then when it comes time to remind them what the rules are, you guys help come up with these rules. These are what we all agreed on, and so they feel like they have a voice. I think that helps as well.
Right. I actually remember doing that in elementary school, like writing out our rules. And I think that actually helps me and my
Yeah,
like my
yeah.
peers remember what the rules were.
Yep.
Okay. What information can you provide me about the Florida system for school improvement and accountability?
I know that there's a lot of, there's different aspects of accountability.
Mhm.
For example, were you in my diversity class?
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about the Florida consent decree,
Hmm.
how, you are required to teach all students whether they're English language learners or not, and there's certain things that you have to do in order to ensure that all students are getting an adequate education. And then, we have they're not Florida state standards anymore. They're not the Sunshine State standards. They change all the time. They're about to become something called the best.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, it's not going to be the Florida standards. It's slowly coming into action, but they've adopted something called best. If you go to CPOMS, I think there's stuff about it. And
Okay.
I don't remember what that stands for now, but that's going to show that our school is giving those students annual yearly progress. And so if our students are not adequately growing each year,
Mhm.
our school will get a grade. And if the school maintains a not passing grade for a number of years in a row, something happens called corrective action, where the state will come in and they will make decisions and replace the administration and replace teachers and replace curriculum. And so we have to make sure that we're teaching the standards, and our students are learning those Florida standards, and they're making annual yearly progress. And so the state will be monitoring that with our standardized tests. So
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me know about that. I had no idea that that was changing. We're still learning the Florida state standards. So,
I know. And since I've been a teacher, it's changed 4 times since I've been a
really?
teacher here in Florida. It's crazy. We never did Common Core, but the Florida standards has a lot of common aspects to it. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think that happened last January during the pandemic. There was meetings about it, and now that's slowly being adopted. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, they're going to be called BEST, and I can't even remember what it stands for. Something excellent student thinking.
Okay.
B,
I'll
I
look
don't
it
know
up
if
later on the CPOMs you said.
yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, how do you collect and use data from formative and summative assessments to monitor learning gains and student progress?
So most schools will adopt some sort of computerized program that adjusts the skills based on what the students' needs are. There's Success Maker, iReady. There's a new one that starts with an A that I never heard of, but um, the students would go to the computer lab every week and either do then they would have an assessment every 4 weeks to kind of gauge what their areas of weakness were and what. So for example, in math, I may have these 5 students. I could look at the data pulled from Success Maker, and I could see these 5 students need additional help with long division, and these 3 students, they need help with decimals. And so I would pull the data from that, and that would be like my summative assessments. But formative assessments, using things like Nearpod, that will allow you to adjust your teaching in the middle of a lesson. So simply just stopping and letting the students answer a quick open-ended question, or having the students, repeat something that you might have said. You can
Hmm.
see if they're grasping the content live while the lesson is happening with Nearpod. So Nearpod is a great one for formative assessment. But for the summative assessments and for just data collection and data tracking, I think those computer adapted tests, but the computer adapted programs that the county adopts for each school, I think those are really great for collecting data.
I'm looking back at the class that you taught, the technology one, and I actually never realized how much I used those programs. And
Yeah.
moving to a new school, I actually taught some of my professors and my like peers about them because
I
they had
love
no
that.
idea about them.
Well, we just met with Mr. Lastra last week, and he was saying he has teachers that come and they come and they apply for a job, and he'll say, we're a Nearpod school, and
Mhm.
they'll say, what's that? He'll ask them, what kind of technology do you use? Well, I have my computer and we use a Microsoft Word. And then he said it's not a deal breaker. He said, but
Mhm.
when students come and they're like, oh yeah, we use Flipgrid, we use, Nearpod and Kahoot, and that gets them excited because these students, that's what they know now. And so you're ahead of the game, sister.
And you can't really go back once they're starting to use that. They won't want to go back is the problem.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
How do you align your formative and summative assessments with the standards?
I think I always try to start with the standards. I always try to start with what is it that what is my job to teach these students? What kind of content do I have to impart based on my job and my position? And so I try to start with the standards, and then, and again, going into CPOMs, if you know that you have to teach MA 4.53 or whatever that is, they'll say that it's, it's geometrical shapes in space or whatever. But if I know that's the standard, I try to start with the standard and then build out, because everything we do needs to be based around what is required for that child to learn by the time that they leave your grade level. So again, I would start with the standards in mind. And again, and when you go to CPOMs, it's great because there's a lot of teacher vetted material there. If there's something you need to teach, there's all kinds of pre-made lessons by teachers that have already been there. There's activities, there's lots of things you can incorporate. But I think starting with the standards is what works best for me, and then just building out from there.
Okay, thank you. Have you guys, how much have you been learning or talking about multisensory instruction? Because that's become a really big thing. So attached to my school, we have a school called Roberts Academy, and it's for the students who struggle with reading. We have students from other states. It's a private school, and they send their kids here, and it's like, oh man, what's it called? It's a special reading instruction. So we use a lot of multisensory instruction. Do you have anything about multisensory?
When I taught, we really didn't do a lot of that, but I do think something that's related that is really important is, understanding that all students learn in different ways, and understanding different learning styles, visual and auditory and kinesthetic. And so I don't know if that's related at all, but it sounds very interesting.
Yeah. Because cool. We, being in the classroom, we have the kids, I'm in a 3rd grade classroom, so they're still learning their syllables and the sounds the letters make. Instead of just like repeating it back to the teacher, they'll like write it in their air with their like pencils or their lasers. And so that's the teacher told me it connects it by their hand and their mouth to their brain, and they learn it better.
Well, let me see if I find it. Hold on, I'm going to show you, because this makes a lot of sense. I'm okay. This is something that I made when I taught 4th grade, and it's called a vocabulator. And it's a giant jar of sand, but when you shake it, there's words in there about the ocean.
Oh, that's so cool.
Then there's ocean animals, but there's vocabulary words about the ocean in there. And so using your hands, you can hear the sound, and they're able to touch it. I mean, so we did this for 1 year. I have one with buttons that has idioms, because button your lip. I have another one with beans. But what's funny is that when you say that, when I was learning to add, my mom and dad played dice all the time. They played these dice games. I add like dice. So if I were to say 3 plus 4, I'd say 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, where the dots are on dice. And that's how I add. And I still, to this day, I'll touch my paper to add. So yeah, that's interesting.
All right, very cool. That's actually great. I love that jar. That's so cool.
Yeah, a vocabulator. And I wrote a grant for it, and then I spent like $200 at Walmart. I have gumballs, and the gumball vocabulator are words that are other words for yummy, because we were writing. So delicious, scrumptious, that kind of stuff is in there. So if they're writing and they want a better word for yummy, they'll get the gumball vocabulator and shake it, and there'll be words in there. So I think I had like 10 in my closet. But yeah, they were super fun. And our grade level just got together one afternoon, ordered pizza, and we were cutting and laminating the words and putting the the little things in. So yeah, vocabulators. And I haven't seen anybody else ever do that, but
No, I haven't either.
yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you. Okay, we have 2 more questions left.
Okay.
How does the standards you teach affect the scope and sequence of your curriculum?
Well, the scope and sequence, that's the first thing that I look at. Like for Lake County, you can go onto their curriculum page and it will give you the scope and sequence for each grade level. And you can kind of see how things are laid out for the year. And so the standards will start kind of grow, they'll go on top of one another in a logical sequence. So you're not going to start the year out with long division in 4th grade.
Right.
You'll probably start on reviewing multiplication and then 1 digit by 1 digit division and then 2 digit by 1 digit. And so that sequence is kind of going to have one on top of the other, just building on one another. And so when I look at the scope and sequence, I can kind of see in the first 9 weeks, this is what I have to teach. And this is the best way to do it. And so that's kind of my GPS when I'm putting my lesson plans together. And I'll look at what the curriculum, what adopted curriculum we have. And I think the last one for reading we had was Wonders. Do they still do that? Wonders for reading?
I've heard of it, but I don't really know of it.
So they'll just take the curriculum that's been adopted by the county and plug it into the scope and sequence. And then I know that I have to go along with that sequence. I can't say, oh, you know what, let's just start with let's just start with decimals when we haven't, I can't just start. I have to slowly build up and get that foundation first.
Right. And then my last question is, to what level does the scope and sequence of your standard-based curriculum drive your instruction decisions?
Yeah, it is the GPS.
You're muted. I don't know if you meant to.
We have to, this is what we teach in the order. So like the entire 4th grade team, we are all on the same page. We're all teaching the same skill at the same time, and we base it completely 100% on the county scope and sequence.
Right. Okay, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
It was good to see you, and keep in touch. All right, kiddo?
I will. Thank you so much.
All right.
I'll let you know
Bye-bye.
how it goes, okay? Thank
Yes,
you.
please do.